Hi guys, welcome to this session in Microsoft Project. In this module, I want to show you how you can link your tasks together, different types of links, and different views of your Gantt chart that you can do just by clicking simple buttons. So first of all, I have a list of tasks on the screen here. What I'm going to do is link these together. Now, you can basically highlight all of the tasks, go to the task tab and click on the chain link, which will link all these tasks and put them in a sequential order, which may well be correct. If I go to Gantt chart formatting and tick critical tasks on, they will all go red because there's no slack between any of these tasks, so therefore they're all critical, and that's your critical path. But usually that isn't the case. I'll just take that off for a second. Normally they don't all follow on one after the other, and there is some tasks that can go on concurrently. So you could do this. You might want to just manually type in the task number. So test software room 1 follows install. That is task 2. So I can put a 2 in there, and then you get a little arrow. So the arrow's pointing at that. So this is the predecessor of that task. Now, train on software room 1 will follow test software, so that's just a 3. And then room 1 complete is just a follow on as well, 4. Now you get like a little step appearing on this side, and that's the first set of these done. But now if I come down to this one, install software room 2 is not dependent on this being complete. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to link these together. So I'm going to say that follows 6. So I'll put a 6 in there, not there. Just undo that. In there, 6. And you can see that following out there. And then this will follow 7. And room 2 complete will be 8. And what I'm going to do here is, because at the moment these are just follow on tasks, so one task finishes and then the next one starts. It's called finish to start link. This one though, I'm going to say that this starts with this one, so it's dependent on this one. So say you've got two engineers and this is the main engineer and this is his assistant. When this guy turns up, he can start this task. So if I put in there 2, because that's the task number, 2, and then SS, start to start, you'll see the little line coming down out of the start of this task 2, pushing into that task, 2SS. Now this one, project complete, needs to follow the two milestones, which is 5 and 9, 5, 9, and then this is all wrapped up. And if I go back and tick on critical tasks, the whole thing is still critical, but now we've saved a bit of time, pulled it back a bit. The idea being, if I pick this task up, move it forward a little bit, everything either moves forward straight off this task or is pushed from this task and this bottom set, everything moved together. I'll just undo that. Before I do that, you notice it's coloured up the tasks that have moved. Control Z will undo that. So this is the default Gantt chart, but you've got lots of different Gantt charts that you can utilize. If I decided to insert a column, let me just insert a column. So I'll call the column priority. So if I type P, you've got a column that is priority, this one. Now they're all going to be defaulting at 500, but you can, because that's what a new task is. If I double click on a task, every time you double click on a task or create a task, the priority is 500. That will run from 1 to 1,000 being more important than 500 and obviously more important than 1. I don't suggest for 1 minute that you go 1, 2, 3, 4 on tasks. It's more likely hundreds, like 100s, 200s, 300s. So tasks, admin tasks might be set to 400 and engineering tasks might be set to 600, which means if you use any of the automatic tools like leveling, if you've got a clash of resources, it will move tasks at 400 before it will move tasks at 600. And that's just another sort of tool that you have if you so wish to force project to work in a specific way. Now you can see on this top task here, I've allocated a few people because I've typed already on the resource sheet. I've typed in these resources. Now you get three resources, three types of resources. You've got a work resource, a material like consumables like paint and paper, and costs, hotels, fuel costs, and things like that. They're the three main types of costs you get. I've allocated these already. I've put some figures in there, so there is going to be a cost to some of these tasks. And then you basically go back and you allocate those, and I'll just do it on one task so you can see how this works. I've gone on to the detail Gantt there. I'll go back onto this one. So the way I tend to do it is, and it's not the only way, I click on resources, click on these sign resources. This box floats, so it means you can just click away and then you can see this changing around in here. So if I go to install software room 2, at the moment Anne is on that one. So if I say Bill, assign Bill, Bill is doing that one. And that's basically how you do that. And if you want to give him some kit, there's computers. I'll assign a computer. And you're looking for any red icons coming in there. So if I assign Anne, for example, that should make her over allocated, and it does. She's gone red there, so that's not great. So I'll remove Anne. She can't be in two places at once, so take that off. You don't want any red men. Some of the templates you get from Microsoft do already have red men in there, so you need to just watch out for that. That was computers, and then you've got Microsoft Office here. I'll assign one of that, and that's basically how you assign resources to a task. You have to create the resources first, and then you can do this. So I'll just close that off like that. Now, this is a default Gantt chart view. You've got down this left hand side some other views, or I can come into, if I go back onto tasks for a second, you've got a load of different views down here that you can utilize. So like for example, task usage shows you the same information but gives you a bit more detail of in terms of hours worked and things like that. So you can see each task and then the list of resources. Now on the task tab on the right hand side, you can use this tool to scroll to the actual details. So for that task, it just brings it into view for you. And that will happen if you move about with zooming in and zooming out. Sometimes you can lose the detail. So that's task usage, a very common view. And if I go back into there, another common one once you are ready to go live with your project is a tracking Gantt. If I click on that view and then just move this over, same sort of thing. You can't see the task, so you click on the task, any task, and then click on bring these into views. Now the difference with this one, you get the percentage complete instead of the task name. So on the default Gantt chart, the first one I was on, which is that one, you can put anything you like on there really, but what you should do is just use these other views. If I go into the format area on this one, if I double click on the white, you can add any bit of information like so. So if I put N there, that would be task name. If I click OK, it's probably going to be a bit cluttered there on top. I'll come off that again. Get that off. Just delete that off. But there is loads and loads of different information that you can add to your Gantt chart. All these fields, if there's any information in these fields, some of them will be blank, but you can add any of this information or have it displayed on the Gantt chart, like so. Cancel that off. You can also, on the Gantt chart itself, this is the Gantt chart. This is the table part of the Gantt chart. You can change this. This is looking at the entry table, but if I go to the View tab at the top, you can click on Tables, and since it's on entry, I could put that to cost. Gives me the cost implications of these tasks. There's the resource allocations with a cost. More often when you're on a tracking Gantt, you might want to use what's called the tracking table, which gives you a few percentage completes and things like that. Now, this hasn't had a baseline saved. I didn't delete the name there. I'll go back into that and do that. Don't want that on there. Delete. Okay. So once I save a baseline, you'll get a little charcoal marker coming underneath, which will give you the idea of where you were before you started making any movements or changes to this plan. To do that, you go into the project tab, and over here you've got set baseline. set baseline, and it will just take a snapshot. And then as soon as I do this, you'll see the charcoal marker come up. Click OK, and it's ready to rock and roll. So now it's all about tracking changes. So if you wanted to, you could say these are the actual start and finish dates. So if I come on to one of these, I'll just say, if I go for finish first off, you'll see it'll fill it all in. Say that finished on the 14th. Now that's caused a movement from the charcoal markers. You can see that's moved off there. Because it was only meant to be a 1-day task and it's ended up being a 3-day task. Now, I tend to tell people the best way to do this is to put the actual durations in. So these are all 1-day tasks, but if I put 2 days in there, it will also complete it. And you can see it moving off the task there. If I put 4 days, and I'll just put these figures in very quickly, just to sort of mess this up. So you can see how far you've come off the actual initial baseline. Now what you have at the top here is on the Gantt chart tab, you can look at the baseline. You can take that off completely, so it's not showing. You can go to slippage and look at that, and it'll show you where it's moved from. You can save a second baseline. If I go back to project, go back into set baseline, there are 11 altogether that you can utilize. Baseline 1 for now. Click on that, and then I've done most of these tasks. Room was not being done. So if I say that was, let's go a bit mad, 8 days. So that's going to have some movement on there. But now if I go back to the Gantt chart, you have got slippage there on baseline 2, or the second baseline. So if there's any slippage, it should show me that. Can't actually see any slippage there. But if I go into baseline 2, it's showing me the markers there. So there's the movement off that baseline. That blue area is the actual task, like so. I'm going to go back to a different Gantt chart. If I go back to the default one, this one, which sits there, that's the very first one. So what I'm going to suggest you don't do is edit all of this when you've got these other views that you could utilize. Now, if you want to insert more columns into this, so sometimes people want to have, I did the priority column. If I smooth this over a little bit, if I had another column and do percentage complete, for example, I've got percentage complete there. I can move that across, come over here a little bit. You can save this view yourself. If I go to views and more views, so other views and then more views, in here you've got more views, but there you've got save view, save current view, and I'll call it Steve. So I've saved a view called Steve, clicking OK to that, which is this is now called Steve, and I'm going to delete these columns that I've added like that, so I don't want them on there now. In fact, before I do that, I need to go and change the view back to the default Gantt chart view. So for more views, there's Steve. If I just go back to the Gantt chart view, that's the default one when you first start. Apply that and then delete those 2 columns. Otherwise, I would have deleted them off Steve. So that's back as it should be. Nothing extra on there. Pull this back across and you're ready to rock and roll. So if I go to the other view area and more views, I can still find Steve in there. What Steve 1, Steve, I'm not sure which one it was. It was obviously that one because I've got those 2 extra columns. So rather than messing up all the default ones, you should create your own, and then you can add whatever you want and delete whatever you want and then fill your boots basically. Now while you're updating a project, so you'd be in the tracking Gantt and tracking table. So if I go back to that, tracking Gantt, go look at the tasks, tracking Gantt. And I've already got the tracking table, it's remembered that. What you should be doing is using the report feature to generate reports, time phase reports as you're going through your project. So these are all preloaded stuff. Now I've almost completed this project. Project overview. Nothing due except these milestones haven't been completed. It's 99% due. If I go back to report, let's go for cost overrun. Do cost overview. So what we've got there, we've got the baseline cost and then the actual cost where there's a difference. You can see that when the tasks have been extended or delayed, that's incurred a cost. So that's a good report. And then at the end of the project, this should be 100% complete. All your reports, if I go back to the task tab, back to the Gantt chart, the project's ready to review and lessons learned. So that's all I want to talk about in this little video, how you can link tasks, how you can change the views that you're looking at, how you can track changes, monitor the project, and create reports. So hopefully that video was of use. Thank you for your time, and I'll catch you in the next one.